Hey, welcome to Fireside Tats. I'm Jake. I'm the host of this show, and we're still in the Atlanta podcast series. This is, I don't know, how many have we done now? This is four. We're at Ink and Dagger. This is the whole reason we came down here. And we are with Brandon David, Clinton Lee, got Russ Abbott coming in tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit to these guys just about their art, about their tattoos, whatever else we decide to talk about. So let's start. Who wants to go first? About just talking about your background, how you got into tattooing, how long you've been tattooing. Brandon, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. My name is Brandon David. I started tattooing about 12 years ago in Albany, Georgia. It's about 3 hours south of Atlanta. I tattooed actually in my mom's shop. She randomly opened a shop when I was about 15 or so, and just kind of did like the shop help family business type thing. After a few years, got really interested in it. And
your mom was a tattooer?
No, she was actually a nurse and got tired of nursing, and after a while she just decided she kind of wanted to get out of it, tired of the stress, the hours, and she got offered a job to learn to pierce. And it was before piercing was anything. It was like 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And she started doing it, making a lot of money, decided to make it a full-time thing. Eventually opened up her own shop. Things just kind of snowballed from there, family business type thing. She got a tattoo artist, kind of became my mentor. And yeah, the first few years started there, just kind of street shop, just doing Cherry Creek Flash every single day till midnight on the weekends. And slowly but surely got a little better, and then got confident, moved out to the West Coast, and then just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, you're the first person I've met that got into tattooing as a family business. I know there are others, but that's the first time I've heard.
Sadly, it all fell apart. Once the family we fell out of it or whatnot, long story short. But it would have been cool to kind of have that keep going, but I kind of want to keep the tradition going eventually, open up my own shop like sometime later in the future.
So you moved out west, tattooed out there for several years.
Yeah.
But your apprenticeship was done at your mom's shop?
Yeah, at my mom's shop. Yeah, it was very short, not the greatest apprenticeship, but enough to get started.
Yeah.
And then from there, just kind of my own personal interest in it and drive just kind of pushed.
That's really common for because you said you've been tattooing for 10 or 12 years?
About 12 years, yeah.
And I, from about that point back, every time I talk to a tattooer that's been tattooing for, I started in 96, and the guy that co-hosts the show with me started in 92, and no one has a good apprenticeship story at that point.
It was either a lot of hazing or just a really shitty apprenticeship, just no actual direction,
Right. It's really common. It's funny how that's changed. I mean, it's done like a 180, and we'll talk a little bit about your apprenticeship, which I'm sure was obvious because of the quality of work you're doing just a couple of years in.
Thank you.
Is
Totally different.
Totally different. At 2 years trying to do the tattoo you just showed me that you did a little while ago, I would have been sweating bullets. It would have been a complete disaster.
Yeah.
I mentioned to him and Savannah all the time, I'm like, God, y'all had the universe made the most perfect situation for them to have the best tattoo experience and come out of it, and it's pretty amazing, the difference.
We see that a lot with our apprentices at Underground Art in Memphis, as I see them, the way that, and I don't apprentice anyone directly, I'm not there enough, we do this a lot, but my co-host David does a lot of apprenticeships. We've just finished one, and he's just brought in a new one, so we've had two people that are 2 or 3 years in now, and just starting at a foundation of just drawing. He has them drawing Flash, and he has them and it's this kind of balance of trying to make sure that he's keeping their voice keeping their mark making true to what they do, and then trying to translate that into something tattooable. And I watch the way that he's guiding people, and I go, man, if I just had you whenever I started this, I had no idea what was tattooable and what was not. There was nobody. The people that I learned from didn't know.
My apprenticeship was build needles, break me down, set me up. I knew everything logistics wise of the shop and everything except for the really important shit, the drawing, the actual tattooing, and all that type stuff.
Yeah,
So
started the same way. My apprenticeship, we had you were assigned. They ran 2 or 3 apprentices at once, and we were wipers. Literally, we sat next to the tattooer in the chair and wiped the tattoo. I can't picture anyone doing that to me. It'd be the most annoying thing. Just get the fuck out of my way.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how far that's come.
I think I did help Russ stretch a couple back pieces out when he was tattooing
See,
before.
that's understandable.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
He let me wear gloves.
Yeah, it felt like you were involved.
Yeah.
All right. So what about yours? You started apprenticing. Well, we talked a little bit. You actually started at another shop for just a short period of time.
Basically it was my senior year of college. I was a fine arts major, focusing pretty much in like portraits, oil painting, stuff like that. Yeah. And I was getting tattooed a lot of the time, and I decided that I wanted to kind of go a little further with it. And I kind of figured out that I wasn't going to be a professional painter just because there's not a lot of those that make a good living actually painting. So I was kind of seeking out something that would help me do art. I was really fascinated with tattooing at the time, and I was starting to get tattooed a lot. So then the guy who was tattooing me was a good friend of mine. I basically just kept asking him for an apprenticeship over and over, and he finally kind of committed to it. And it was just the shop we worked at wasn't the most conducive situation to me to be learning and him to be teaching, and he kind of wanted to get out of that shop and go somewhere else. And it just happened to be at the time that I saw a thing on Tattoo Snob that Russ was looking for an apprentice, and I saw that and I was like, wow, it's a golden opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I brought it up to him. I wasn't really sure what his reaction was going to be, and I was totally cool with whatever he decided. If he wanted me to stick it out with him, then totally cool. But I knew that it would allow him to leave that shop, and it wouldn't be as hard for him to find another job, because a lot of shops don't want to take an artist that has an apprentice they're trying to carry with them.
Well, that was nice that he cared enough to have stuck it out with you. He was going to stick it out at that shop just to keep.
Well, and I brought it up to him, and I was like, hey, Russ is looking for an apprentice. I was thinking about applying for this, what's your outtake on it? And he was actually really stoked and really supportive. He's like, I wish I could have apprenticed under somebody like Russ. And so that night I went home and I was going to apply for the apprenticeship. The only time I had ever spoken to Russ prior to that was at a Man Day event. And I asked him if he has this big wheel that you spin and win a prize. You can pay like $5 and win a prize. And I asked him if apprenticeship was on the wheel of destiny, and he laughed and said no. But so 6 months later or so, I was in this position at the other shop, and I went home that night. I was gonna write up my paperwork. You had to fill out like this long form, or not really long form, but you had to write out reasons you wanted the apprenticeship, put pictures together, put a portfolio together pretty much. And before I even got to do that, I was making some dinner and my phone rang, and I didn't recognize the number, so I picked it up, and it was a guy, and he said, hey, is Clint there? And I was like, this is him. And he was like, hey, this is Russ Abbott. And I was like, what the fuck? Why is Russ Abbott calling me right now? Yeah. And it was actually about a tattoo that I had applied for to get an appointment to get a sleeve done by him. And at that time, I was just a broke college student, and I didn't have the money anymore. Yeah. And I told him, I applied for that a while back. I don't have that money, but are you still looking for an apprentice? And so the story kind of ends there, or starts there, for my apprenticeship. He told me no, he wasn't looking for an apprentice, but he's open to the idea of one. And I told him my situation. He didn't really want to take an apprentice from somebody else. But I convinced him to at least look at my portfolio. I was like, if I bring in a letter of recommendation from this guy and bring in my portfolio, will you at least just look at it? He did, and he sent me home with a project that night to do. And I think it was one of those things where it's just, how much can I put this guy through to prove that he really wants it? Right. And so I came back, and he gave me another project, came back, gave me another project, and then he finally asked me, after like a month of doing this, he asked me if I wanted to start coming in, like every Thursday. And so I did that until I finished college, and then I started full time.
Yeah. That's understandable. We get a lot of our questions come from newer tattooers or people that want to get apprenticeships and things like that. Sure. And we do episodes on how to build a portfolio and whatever. And the one thing that we've kind of preached over and over is how important it is not to try to tattoo and then get an apprenticeship. So Russ saying, like, you can completely understand Russ being hesitant because he had no idea what bad habits he might have to break if you were apprenticing under someone else, and
or egos.
I think a lot of it had to do too is like, you know, he didn't want to step on anybody else's toes. He you know, Russell a lot of times will try to put himself in the position of, if I was that tattooer, what would my mindset be? You know.
Yeah. Well, what about, so no formal art training before tattooing for you?
I sucked ass at art, man. Yeah, I always wanted to do it. I was way better at everything else. I sucked at art, and somehow I chose the one thing that I really sucked at to try to be good at, and to do as a profession. So.
Well, and that's a testament too, because you know, so many people are like, oh God, I'd love to be able to do that, but I can't draw. And it's like, who were we talking to? One of the interviews we just did was like, man, you can learn to draw just like you can learn to play sports or learn to cook or whatever.
Yeah.
Just how much effort are you willing to put into it?
Yeah, just how hard are you willing to work to make it happen. And I remember when I was in college reading Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. I don't know if y'all ever read that book, but the idea of people drawing what they think something should look like, as opposed to just learning how to look at something and draw what it actually looks like. And that really is it. I mean, you have this stylized idea of what you think lips look like or an eyeball looks like, and then you're like, I can't draw because every time I draw an eyeball, it looks retarded. It's like, it's because you're drawing what you think an eyeball looks like.
Exactly.
Look at an eyeball, you'll figure it out.
Yep.
So that says
it's crazy how long it took me to learn that.
Yeah.
To just like get good reference. It's like took forever for me to realize that. Always trying to draw, be like, I want to draw a bear. All right, and just start drawing and be like, okay, I suck, you know, and then quit. Yeah. You know, but then if you actually get the right reference, you know, you can really study it and figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of people, I think, come in, especially come into tattooing, and you guys both do kind of traditional, neo-traditional, stylized types of tattooing. A lot of people come in and they look at someone like you and they're like, oh, that's the kind of work I like. So they draw from your drawings. They draw from your tattoos. Yeah. And they never, if they're going to draw a bear, they look at someone's stylized tattoo of a bear, and they don't ever think to look up a photo of a bear. You know, it's just they're drawing from a stylized idea already, which makes it so hard to put your own. You're trying to mimic something that's just not your language at all.
Yeah,
you're trying to mimic something that's already been mimicked.
Right. Yeah. And their mind's eye gets set on it and all that. Like they see this as like almost their finished product, even though they don't say that that's what they want. Like in their head, they see that, you know, and you have to fight against that for sure.
Right. So, I want it to look like this. I love the way this person tattoos. So and you know, clients do the same thing. I ask people not to bring in photos of not to bring in tattoos as reference for a consultation. I say, I don't want drawings. I don't want photos. I want like photographic reference. And then if you took the time to pick a tattooer, then you like the way that I draw. You like the way that I translate. So let me translate that actual imagery.
For sure. That's what I tell people all the time.
That's exact same route. Yeah. Once they've seen your work, that's what's going to have a good portfolio, an expansive portfolio. Then you can just say that. You can be like, well, this is how I do it. You've seen that. And if they liked it, they'll be like, yeah, well then cool. You'll be like, okay, well I'll make it look like that. And they're generally pretty happy with that. But
yeah, I think so. And it's just a matter of educating people. I think a lot of people just don't know what their artist wants to see.
A lot of people are still nervous in tattoo shops, and I feel like a lot of people kind of lose that sense about them. We're here every day, and a lot of people are coming in and it's their first or second tattoo. And I remember my first time walking into a tattoo shop, I knew I wasn't going to get anything, but I wanted to be in there, and I was walking around and somebody asked me if I need help. I was just, no, I want to look around. And you can feel the nervousness from a lot of people. So it's kind of our job, our duty to kind of make them feel comfortable. It should be a good experience overall.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, because we do forget sitting in tattoo shops all the time that they are really intimidating places.
Yeah. I mean, I get nervous when I walk in another shop.
Yeah.
I'm like walking in the door and I'm like none of what I know I am here exists there. Right. So all the confidence just falls off, and I'm like, I'm walking in like a regular guy, and you get talked to like that a lot of times in the beginning. They're like, hey, what's up? Like they don't know who you are, and they're just treating you like you're coming in to get a tattoo. Yeah. I mean, I could be one of those punk ass kids covered in bad tattoos, and they're just giving me a hard time for all they know, So it's definitely intimidating.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to forget. Along the lines of translating imagery and things like that, how do you feel like? You said you did a lot of painting, portrait work, things like that. Did you bring much of that into the style of tattooing that you're doing today?
So when I first started apprenticing here, everybody thought I was going to do portraits. I mean, Russ particularly. It was a hard transition for me to come in from art school. Basically, when you're learning to draw in school, they're teaching you do not use lines. You're creating shapes with value. You're looking at the person in life, and you're creating that without using any lines. So when I was trying to lose that aspect, I didn't know where to put the lines. It took me a while to kind of grasp that. So for a long time, I didn't like traditional. I wanted to do more realism because this is what I was comfortable with. And then Russ kind of made me start tracing Sailor Jerry Flash and redrawing that stuff, and I fell in love with it. And that's just, it actually got to a point in my apprenticeship when I could do tattoos that he told me I wasn't allowed to do any more traditional tattoos because that's all I was doing. I would find somebody that wanted a traditional tattoo, and I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. And Russ was like, no more of that. Like, here's a list of stuff you need to do before you can get to the next step of your apprenticeship. And there's nothing even close to traditional on there. So
yeah. Did I notice that you just did a portrait? Did I see on was it your Instagram? I just saw you did a portrait recently in the last week.
Yeah,
or so?
I did.
So, but that's one of just a couple that you've even.
I've only done two. They were both on the same guy. First one was Frankenstein's monster, and then right below that, I did Bela Lugosi on his leg as well.
Do you feel like that your painting background or portrait painting background prepared you for that at all?
I think it certainly helped. Being able to look at a picture and recreate it by following like where their proportions are and using measurements with your eyes is something you use in drawing as well as in tattooing, especially with portraits, because sometimes you lose that stencil. Or with the situation of the Bela Lugosi that I did it on him originally in the beginning of my apprenticeship, and man, when it came back, it looked like I did the whole thing with one drop gray. It was really? Like so light, and I'm still not exactly sure what it was. His skin was real irritated at the time, and he came back in this time, and I mean, I did that portrait in like maybe an hour and a half or something, and it was almost completely gone. All that was there was pretty much the hair and like just the faintest bit of like his like dark shading and stuff, but it was all super light. So going back into it, I think it definitely helped in that situation particularly. Yeah.
I think a lot of times, with I'm not an accomplished painter at all, but I've been doing a lot of workshops with really good painters lately, and I was never really a portrait painter, but that's what we do, and it's all life painting, which is still the biggest challenge in the world to me.
Sure.
But the one difficulty I have in translating that to tattooing, and I don't do really many portraits in tattooing, is I'm able to sneak up on painting. I'm able to, and I paint a lot alla prima. I don't glaze a lot. I mean, I put paint on the canvas, move it around, and but I still feel like I'm kind of sneaking up on it, and I don't have that luxury in tattooing. I have to be more deliberate, or you end up with just the same gray all the way through, and it's kind of beat up and milky and all that. So, what about you? Do you play with any realism at all?
A funny story with my little realism venture is I actually did one decently good portrait of a client of mine's grandma, and it came out pretty good. I think one of the eyes was a little wonky-ish. It was really small. But I was happy with it. You know what I mean? Like everything was there, really solid. It was all like tight liner, like 3 work. And it was good. And then she came in to get her granddad tattooed on her other arm, and I had this bright idea to use like actual gray color. Yeah. And I go through the tattoo and do the tattoo, and she's a white female, so she had a white male granddad, and she comes back in. And I knew what I'd fucked up, like, when I did the tattoo. Like, she walked out, and I was just like, stomach hurts, like, just felt like total shit about
she's gone.
I'm thinking, like, if she never comes back, that wouldn't be bad, Well, she shows back up because she was a really good client of mine, her and her husband both. She shows back up, and she comes in, and I'm like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, fuck, here goes that moment. And she throws out her forearm, and it's, like, just huge on her forearm. She goes, if one more motherfucker asks me why I have Obama tattooed on my arm, I'm going to fucking trip out. And I was just like, I honestly wanted to faint. I was so, like, just terrified of just everything that had happened. And yeah, I just told her that I suck at portraits. And I was like, I know some people that might be able to do something with it. I was like, but honestly, you don't want me going back into it because I fucked it up once. Don't let me touch it again. Like, please, just, I never heard from her ever again. Ever again.
It's terrible. At least you were honest and didn't go back and try to fix it.
Hopefully she got some laser removal or something at some point, but that haunts me to this day. I've approached like kind of semi-traditionalist realism like that, just like whip black and gray, like real simple kind of realism, and I enjoy it, but I'm so afraid to do faces because of that. And I think one day I'll try again. I'm just gonna wait, till Obama gets out of my head.
Right. Yeah, and there are so many people that are so good at that I just think like, let's let them do it.
Why even try?
It's like with all styles, if they're near you, and they're a decent person, why not send them this work?
Yeah. But having that in your pocket as something that you can do is really, it's really awesome because there's so many tattooers out there that are focused on one particular style, and that's just one thing that I really appreciate about people like Russ is he can really take any style and it's in his wheelhouse to pull off an amazing tattoo, and he's to the point where he can kind of pick and choose what he wants to do. Obviously he's been tattooing that long, but there's nothing that I feel like he wouldn't be able to just knock out of the park.
Yeah.
The style mixtures.
That's what makes him such an amazing person to learn from, because any question I have, I can always go to him and he's a wealth of knowledge. Like it's ridiculous.
On any style. Yeah. Literally, any fucking style.
I'm always amazed by people like that. There's a guy that guest spots at our shop named Dimitri HK's in Paris, and he's like that. I mean, just the most beautiful portrait work. I mean, traditional stuff, Japanese. I mean, whatever
Dimitri,
HK is what he goes by. It's just he's been tattooing forever, for 20 plus years.
The ones that did all the crazy like black and gray smoky stuff and like the man, I wish I could think of it.
He has done a lot of that. He does, like I'm saying, he can just do anything. And you flip through his portfolio, and you're like, God, it looks like a different master from different stuff. It doesn't look like the same person could have done it. Randy Muller comes to our shop. So I don't know if you know him down in New Orleans, and he's the same way. It's just like, God, man, how are you so good at everything? It's ridiculous. I had another point I wanted to make with that, but I've lost it. Do you paint at all? Do you work in any other?
I used to work in a lot of different mediums. Now, I mean, I've done a list of them. Now watercolor, just kind of basically working here and being mentored by Russ now and kind of just being in that learning curve of things. I've gone back more to the roots of actual like tattooing things, like watercoloring, like flash pages and shit like that. And I always underestimated it, and now getting into it, just the composition of the pages and painting itself, the designs, everything about it is it's fun, man. Yeah, I really enjoy doing it.
And that's nice after 12 years that you're still willing to. A lot of people aren't really that open to taking advice. They're really stuck in their ways after tattooing for that period of time.
And, I find out something new every time. Yeah. Every time I paint like anything, I either learn something not to do or something to do, like every single time. So
yeah. Well, all right, so Clinton, do you see your work moving? Are both of you guys kind of happy with what you're doing right now? Or where do you see it going, in the future? Do you want to expand? Are you happy with the traditional?
I'm always trying to expand. I feel like I'm 99% of the time I'm not satisfied with what I'm currently doing. I'm always trying to get better. It's kind of like chasing a
dragon.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I'm happy in a sense with the work that I'm doing. I feel like clients are leaving and they're, I can see that they're stoked on what they get and stuff. But every tattoo I end, I'm like, oh man, like I could have done this better, or I could do this better, So I try to get a lot of critique from Russ and from other artists, and I'm always critiquing myself heavily. And a lot of times I love a tattoo when I finish it, and then 15 minutes later, I'm like, oh man, I think that's just the nature of being an artist, though.
Passion,
Right. And then if you don't have that drive, I don't see, your longevity won't be there. I don't think.
Just grow stagnant, eventually.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing, everyone is like, oh, that Instagram, just keep going, like seeing 1,000 of those now,
Yeah, exactly. And it's easy to do, and it takes people with that mindset. It takes a lot of people with that mindset working together to make, I think, a successful shop. And I've been in positions, even at my current shop, where everyone's worked together for so long, and we know what the other one does, and no one takes the time to like stop in and look at what you're doing, or
Right.
it's just like everyone just kind of shows up, goes through what they do, and it's not until we bring someone new or a guest comes through or something like that you kind of get revitalized a little
Sure.
bit. But it's so important, and if you can keep that dynamic going in the shop of like getting critiqued by other people around you, offering your opinion on, at least stopping and looking at what they're doing when you walk by.
I pretty much always try to walk my client around the shop and show the tattoo to every artist that's working that day.
Yeah, that's great.
I think it makes the client feel good that you're proud to show off the tattoo you've been doing, and then later you can ask, okay, well, what did you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you think because the like new school, the neo-traditional, a lot of this a lot of these styles have become so popular. Do you think people coming in today, as someone that's just been tattooing a couple of years, feel like they're like maybe forced to find a style way too early in their
Artists,
in their career?
I think a lot of people try to find a style too early. I think that a style is not something that you should be trying to make happen. It's one of those things that just naturally evolves over time. People will be able to pick out your tattoos, and me being this early, like I have no business trying to create a style. I'm just trying to do good tattoos, and if they look like mine, that's awesome. I want to have something that's consistent, but I don't think that I'm ready to like. I'm just not trying to narrow myself into a field of saying I only do this style. So if you want that as something else, I can't help you. I'm trying to do the tattoos that people come in here asking for, and I'm trying to put a little bit of me into every tattoo, and if that forms a style, then great. Or
Yeah. What do you feel?
I think that I just think that a lot of people like skip the fundamentals. I did it for years, and just from my own experience, it took me especially these days with the amount of knowledge that's out there, it took me 5 times longer than it takes someone these days to start developing like really good solid tattoos, because I was constantly striving to have like a style. I was never taught any of the fundamentals. I didn't have any of the basics. I never knew where any of the shit came from, and I've now and later in my years have learned all that and realized that if you just start there, the progression, like the way these guys have, your progression is going to grow, and eventually you're going to have a style, that you're on. But skipping all the fundamentals is a big thing that happens these days for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of biting, people just blatantly taking someone else's stuff and kind of claiming it as their style, just copying and mimicking like characteristics of people's tattoos.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point is if you're just putting in the work that the style will develop completely on its own.
Yeah,
We just had a great interview with a guy named Jeffrey Hine, who's just one of the best painters I've ever seen, and he quit. It's a little bit off topic, but he was a successful figure painter. He was selling work for a lot of money, doing really well, and at one point just decided he didn't like where his work was going, and he decided he wanted to get rid of anything he considered a crutch, and working from photographs to him was a crutch. He went to 100% life painting.
Wow.
And he's actually the only living artist that is doing large-scale multi-figure paintings 100% from life. So he's doing he's working on a piece right now he has for like the last year that's like 40 plus figures. It's a biblical piece with dogs, kids, all kinds of stuff, all from life. He has like a cycle of people coming through
and he's just adding them in.
That's awesome.
And he's just working constantly. And so he has a school in Salt Lake City where he takes on like, I forget, like 12 or 14 apprentices at a time.
Wow.
And it's all 100% from life. He doesn't allow photographs, and he talks about that, like people, a lot of times these crutches, like looking at other people's work too much or whatever, kind of make you feel like you have to work a certain way. And he's like, the thing is like everyone's mark making is unique. I mean, whether they draw or whether they don't. If we all sit here and we're just talking and you give us a pad and paper, we'll make little doodles or whatever, and they'll be completely unique to us.
Yeah.
And that's his big thing. Is like if your reference is life, then your natural mark making will come out a lot easier than if you're just trying to mimic Right.
I feel that, I was out of that bubble for most of my years, and that was where I guess a lot of my creativity and just kind of free, which most of the art I was doing sucked. There was no anything really great about it other than I guess the creative side of it. But it's cool now to go back on those roots, and I feel like I'm in a little bit of a bubble, going back to the classic type stuff. But eventually, once I learn that and I'm good at that, then I can kind of expand back out of that and then kind of do my own creative thing, but with more and better like structural like tattoos.
Yeah.
So.
Are you familiar with Terry Rogers' work?
I don't think so.
He does these, I think he's a European painter, somebody that I've looked at a lot in college because I was doing a lot of nude figures and stuff. But he does, it's almost, they're these humongous paintings, and it's almost like somebody popped up with a disposable camera in the middle of an orgy. And it's like all these socialites like standing around like half naked and stuff, and just like snapped a photo. But they're gorgeous paintings and they're humongous. They're really cool. You saying like
Rogers,
with like multiple figures is kind of reminding me that you should check out his work.
Yeah, I will. Terry Rogers. I'll look at that. That stuff just completely blows my mind. And I thought when he brought that up about the mark making being so unique, it was like I loved it because it. You feel like sometimes when you're making art, you have to make some kind of like statement, not necessarily in tattoos because it's a collaborative effort, but in painting, for instance, you feel like you have to have something to say. Your subject matter. If you're going to be a gallery artist, you have to have some like social commentary or something.
That was huge in college.
And I feel like I've always felt like, man, I don't really have super strong opinions on a lot of social or political or religious. Like I just don't. And Jeff had he really made me feel a lot better by saying like, if you're making your own marks, then you do it. That's what you're saying. That's your mark making is your voice. And he said that really, if you're trying to be a full-time artist, you really don't have time to be super educated on all of those other subjects. Like it takes too much time to get good at this.
Right.
So, I used to just make shit up. I'd be like, this is that, and it just because I would just draw some random shit and paint it, and then they'd be like, so what is it? I'd be like, well, I never thought about that. So eventually I just started being like, well, this is war because this, and blah, blah. And people are like, oh, wow, that's really cool.
See that.
And I'm like,
genius.
That was something they were always pressing on us in college was, well, what are you conceptualizing here? What's your concept? What are you trying to say with this painting? I'm like, I just like painting like the figure, So then you got to kind of adapt it to appease them, and I usually just came.
It's like I like birds,
something.
so I painted a bird. They're like, that's it. It's like,
But some of that stuff is kind of cool when you think about what the artist is trying to say, and then you look at that and you actually see it. But at first, if you just were looking at the painting, you wouldn't have immediately noticed what they were trying to say. But with the title of the show or the title of the painting, you kind of start picking it up and you develop your own story in your head of what's happening in the painting. I do kind of like that aspect of painting.
And I think it's great when people are able to pull that off, but I just think that sometimes it's intimidating or overwhelming for an artist to be like, well, I can't ever be a real professional artist because I don't have anything significant to say.
Yeah, like stories to tell or something,
And another thing is I don't feel like you should have to have a concept or a thought behind the painting before you start the painting. A lot of time that stuff develops as you're doing the painting. So
very true.
Paint what you want to paint, and then let the painting tell you where it's supposed to go.
Start adding things in that you're feeling now.
Yeah. Where are we on time? What in the world? He's throwing hand signals. 30. Sweet. All right. I just want to make sure we weren't getting crazy. I think that's. I mean, obviously we're talking about painting now, and in tattooing, it's a little bit different because it is such a collaborative process. But some of that work, luckily, is done for you because the client comes in with what they want to say, and then it's just up to you to translate it.
Sure.
So it's really like half the work is done for you most of the time in tattooing.
But you still have that where you want to make an imprint. And everybody's different, but I with me, like I want it to be powerful. I want it to really speak those volumes for that person, not just, I want this, just do it simple and bland, even though it's not all crazy and have, all this realistic stuff, but just still be a powerful tattoo, And
another thing, I act like that half the work is done for you, but really narrowing down what a client wants. But my co-host David talks about cornucopia tattoos all the time when people come in and they sit down for a consultation and they're like, well, I'm a Taurus, but my mom, she loves lilies. And then also my grandfather died in 19 whatever. And so they want to put like everything they ever thought of into one tattoo. So it's not really as easy as simplified as I just made it sound.
Yeah,
and a lot of times you make more work by talking to people and trying to actually determine what's important. A lot of times people think that they have to have this very literal representation of what they want, and they're not really willing to think about other ways.
I just recommend them get multiple tattoos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's not one tattoo. Man. That's a lot of tattoos.
It's
you're
like, this
talking
makes a
about.
clean tattoo, this makes a clean tattoo, and this makes a clean tattoo. So you have 3 here.
Yeah.
Well, it's about like telling them like, this is my job. Like, let me tell you what's going to make a good tattoo. You came here for a reason. Let me guide you. Don't look at Pinterest and think that, that tattoo looks great healed, or, it's going to age well in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years,
Yeah, absolutely. They, I don't like to do text, and most all my clients know that. And I try to find any way that I can to make text something cooler, to make an image that says what they want to say. And the biggest battle that I have with that is that a lot of people have this idea that everyone that looks at their tattoo needs to know exactly what it means the second that they see it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, well, if it doesn't say that, then how's everyone going to know that's what I have to say?
Yeah, I typically tell people, I'm like, images make good tattoos, and then lettering makes good tattoos. If you try to put them together, usually you have to sacrifice a little bit on one. I was like, why don't we just do the image that you really want, and then the lettering, let that be what you tell the people about the tattoo when they ask you about it.
Yeah,
and they're like, oh, yeah, that kind of is cool, because that gives me a reason to talk about my tattoo.
Right. Yeah. I think that's that's actually a really good way to look at it. The lettering is what you have to say, so just say it.
Yeah.
don't
you definitely
it.
always have to sacrifice something out of your subject matter to make lettering work in a tattoo. Somewhere, something detail-wise is going to get lost,
I think lettering is just such a beautiful thing when it's done well. Like it deserves to be its own tattoo. And if you just stick if you're not great at lettering, or even if you're decent, you just stick some lettering at the bottom, a lot of times it distracts from this crazy awesome image that they got. A lot of people are just going to look straight at the letters.
I think that's
and then finding the letters that match the piece and all that type of stuff, man. It can be extremely complicating.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, lettering it's so tricky because of that, and most of us aren't educated enough with type styles to really know what. I mean, whenever I'm going through, I'm like, if I'm forced to do that, I've scanned my image in, I've laid my lettering out the way it's supposed to go, and I'm just clicking through all the fonts, just watching them go through to see what. I don't even know what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for one that I'm like, man, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do that.
For this tattoo, this makes sense.
Right, but I don't know why. I mean, so that's why I prefer just to leave it out altogether. Well, if people want to find you guys, are you guys both booking appointments, doing walk-ins?
We're booking appointments. Typically, we trade off. We usually have a artist doing walk-ins at least one day a week, so we kind of rotate that schedule out.
That is. Okay, that's a good way to do it. If they want to find you, what's the best way? Is it through?
My Instagram is Clinton Lee Tattoos, and it's Lee, Lee.
Okay. Is that the best way to get you for appointments, or is there a better way?
Usually, going through the shop, we have a manager who goes through all of our appointments. If they want to get in touch with us here at the shop, it's ink and dagger ATL at gmail.com, and everything's spelled out.
Okay.
And our website, inkanddaggertattoo.com, as well, has the full-on artist list where you can, the minimals, the hourly rates, and all that. You can set everything up through that as well.
Got a profile for the artist and a mini portfolio and stuff.
We actually all have an Instagram. Mine's Brandon David Tattooer. Everybody in the tire shop has one that's personal. So, and we actually have a shop one as well. So.
Yeah, I think I follow all those now. So check these guys out if you haven't. In the show notes, we're going to drop all that in, so you won't have to remember it or write it down. We'll link to the site, to portfolios. Man, thanks guys. It was fun.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Thanks. Y'all take it easy. Tattooimprovement.com. Go sign up for our mailing list.
Yeah.